wealthy heir falls for a broke teacher. What his mother does next is heartbreaking. Ethan Langford adjusted his tie in the gilded mirror of his family's estate, the weight of expectations settling on his shoulders. At 29, he was the sole heir to the Langford fortune, a legacy built on generations of wealth and power. To the outside world, Ethan had it all: charm, good looks, and a future paved with opportunity. But inside, he felt like a prisoner in a life that had been planned out long before he was born. "Ethan, you'll be late for dinner," his mother's sharp voice rang from the grand staircase. Vivian Langford was a woman of elegance and control, her every word carrying an air of authority. She ruled the Langford household and Ethan's life with an iron fist wrapped in designer gloves. "I'll be right there, Mother," Ethan called back, forcing a smile as he descended the stairs. Tonight's dinner was another carefully curated affair, a meeting with the Worthingtons, one of the wealthiest families in the city. Vivian had been not so subtly hinting at a match between Ethan and their daughter, Caroline, for months. A few days later, Ethan found himself at a small cafe near the local elementary school, far from the polished world of his family's estate. He often came here for a sense of normalcy, a break from the stifling expectations that defined his life. It was there that he first noticed her. She was sitting by the window, a stack of books and papers spread across the table in front of her. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, and she absent-mindedly twirled a pen as she read. There was a quiet intensity about her, a sense of purpose that drew him in. Ethan didn't approach her at first. He simply watched, intrigued by the way she seemed completely absorbed in her work. It wasn't until he accidentally knocked over his coffee that she looked up, startled by the commotion. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice warm and genuine. "Yes, just a little clumsy," Ethan replied, laughing nervously. "It's not every day I make such a dramatic first impression." She smiled, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt a spark of something real. Her name was Lily Harper, and she was a teacher at the local elementary school. Over the next few weeks, Ethan found himself returning to the cafe more often, drawn to her kindness and passion for her work. Their conversations started casually, discussing books, current events, and the occasional lighthearted joke, but soon grew deeper. Lily spoke about her students with such love and dedication that it was impossible not to admire her. One evening, as they walked through the park after an impromptu coffee date, Ethan finally told her about his family. "The Langfords?" Lily asked, her eyes widening in surprise. "As in Langford Enterprises?" Ethan nodded, his expression sheepish. "Yeah, that's me. The reluctant heir to the Langford Empire." "I had no idea," Lily said, her voice soft. "You don't seem like someone who grew up in that world." Ethan smiled. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." Their relationship blossomed quickly, despite the stark differences in their backgrounds. Ethan admired Lily's groundedness, her ability to find joy in simple things, and her unwavering commitment to her students. Lily, in turn, appreciated Ethan's humility and his willingness to see beyond his privileged upbringing. But their happiness was not without challenges. Ethan knew his mother would never approve of Lily. Vivian Langford was fiercely protective of the family's image and connections, and a public school teacher from a modest background didn't fit into her plans for her son's future. Ethan kept their relationship a secret, savoring the moments they spent together without the weight of his family's expectations. But as their bond deepened, he knew he couldn't keep Lily hidden forever. The day Ethan introduced Lily to his mother was as tense as he had feared. Vivian greeted her with a thin smile, her eyes scanning Lily from head to toe as if assessing her worth. "So, you're a teacher," she said, her tone polite but condescending. "Yes, Mrs. Langford," Lily replied, her voice steady. "I teach 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary." "How noble," Vivian said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I imagine it's very fulfilling work." "It is," Lily said. "I love helping my students grow and learn. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." Vivian nodded, her expression unreadable. "Well, I suppose it takes a certain type of person to dedicate themselves to such work." Ethan clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to defend Lily. He knew his mother's words were meant to undermine her, to subtly remind Lily that she didn't belong in their world. After dinner, as Lily and Ethan walked to her car, she turned to him with a troubled expression. "Your mother doesn't like me," she said. "She doesn't know you," Ethan replied quickly. "She's just protective." "Ethan, I don't need her to like me," Lily said. "But I do need to know that you're willing to stand up for us." "I am," Ethan said, taking her hands in his. "Lily, you mean more to me than anyone else. I won't let her come between us." But Vivian Langford was not one to be ignored. Over the next few weeks, she made her disapproval of Lily increasingly clear. She invited Caroline Worthington to lunch with Ethan, accidentally arranged meetings with influential families, and even tried to convince Ethan that his relationship with Lily was a passing phase. "She's not right for you, Ethan," Vivian said one evening as they sat in the parlor. "She's a sweet girl, I'm sure, but she doesn't understand our world. She'll hold you back." "Lily is everything I want," Ethan said firmly. "She's smart, kind, and she makes me happy. Isn't that what matters?" Vivian's expression hardened. "Happiness is fleeting, Ethan. Family and legacy are forever. Don't throw away everything we've built for a relationship that won't last." The breaking point came when Vivian decided to take matters into her own hands. She arranged for a private investigator to dig into Lily's past, hoping to find something, anything, that could discredit her. When the report came back, it included a detail that Vivian seized upon with ruthless precision. Lily's father had been arrested years ago for embezzlement. Vivian confronted Ethan with the information, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "I'm only telling you this because I care about you," she said. "Her family's history will tarnish our name, Ethan. Can't you see that?" Ethan's heart sank as he read the report. He knew Vivian was using this to manipulate him, but the weight of his family's expectations pressed down on him. How could he protect Lily from a world that seemed determined to tear them apart? Lily, unaware of Vivian's machinations, noticed the change in Ethan. He became distant, his once bright eyes clouded with worry. One evening, as they sat together on her couch, she finally asked, "Ethan, what's going on? You've been so distant lately." He hesitated, struggling to find the words. "Lily, my mother found out about your father." Lily's face fell, her hands trembling. "How?" "She hired someone to look into your past," Ethan admitted, guilt written all over his face. "She's using it as an excuse to tear us apart." Lily stood, her voice shaking. "My father made mistakes, but that doesn't define me. I thought you understood that." "I do," Ethan said, reaching for her. "But she's relentless. I don't know how to protect you from her." "I don't need you to protect me," Lily said, her eyes filled with tears. "I need you to stand by me." Ethan sat on the edge of his bed that night, his head in his hands, replaying Lily's words over and over. "I need you to stand by me." The truth hit him like a weight. She wasn't asking for protection. She was asking for partnership, for him to fight alongside her against the walls his mother had built. But for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't know if he was strong enough to defy Vivian Langford. The following days were filled with tension. Ethan tried to keep up appearances around his mother while wrestling with the growing chasm between him and Lily. He knew he couldn't continue like this. Something had to give. Finally, he made his decision. One evening, he walked into the Langford estate's grand sitting room, where Vivian sat sipping tea with an air of smug composure. "Mother, we need to talk," Ethan said, his tone sharp. Vivian looked up, her expression cool. "Of course, dear. What is it?" "It's about Lily," he said, stepping closer. "This has to stop." Vivian sighed, setting her teacup down delicately. "Ethan, I only want what's best for you. Lily is a lovely girl, but she's not suitable for our family." "That's not your decision to make," Ethan shot back. "I love her, and I'm not going to let you drive her away." Vivian's expression hardened. "You're being naive, Ethan. Love isn't enough. Do you think she'll fit into our world? Do you think she'll understand the responsibilities you carry?" Ethan took a deep breath, his voice trembling with emotion. "She doesn't have to fit into your world, because I'm done trying to live by your rules. Lily makes me happy, Mother. She makes me feel alive in a way this house never has." For the first time, Vivian looked genuinely taken aback. She opened her mouth to respond, but Ethan cut her off. "I've spent my entire life trying to live up to your expectations," he continued. but I'm done sacrificing my happiness for your approval. If you can't accept Lily, then you'll lose me too." Vivian's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger breaking through her composure. "You're making a mistake, Ethan." "No," he said firmly. "I'm finally doing what's right." The confrontation left Ethan shaken but resolute. That same night, he drove to Lily's apartment, hoping she would give him a chance to explain. When she opened the door, her eyes were red from crying, but her expression was guarded. "Ethan," she said softly, "what are you doing here?" "I came to apologize," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I should have stood up to my mother sooner. I let her come between us, and I hate myself for it." Lily crossed her arms, her voice quiet but firm. "Do you really think this is going to work, Ethan? Your mother isn't going to change. And I can't live my life under her microscope." "She doesn't have to change," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Because I've made my choice, Lily. I choose you. I'll walk away from my family if I have to." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "I don't want you to give up your family for me. That's not what love is about." Ethan reached for her hands, his voice breaking. "Then help me find another way. I can't lose you, Lily. You're the only thing that's real in my life." For a long moment, Lily stared at him, her heart warring with her head. Finally, she whispered, "I don't want to lose you either." Rebuilding their relationship wasn't easy. Vivian, furious at Ethan's defiance, froze him out entirely. She stopped inviting him to family events, cut him off from Langford Enterprises, and even hinted at disinheriting him. For Ethan, it was painful but liberating. He moved into a modest apartment, got a job working for a nonprofit, and began carving out a life independent of his family's wealth. Lily stood by his side through it all, though she worried about the toll it was taking on him. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" she asked one evening as they cooked dinner together in their tiny kitchen. "You've given up so much." Ethan smiled, pulling her into his arms. "I've gained more than I ever lost. I have you, and that's all I need." Meanwhile, Vivian Langford was not as composed as she appeared. Behind the closed doors of the Langford estate, she struggled to reconcile her son's rebellion with her vision of their family. For the first time in her life, she began to question whether her relentless pursuit of perfection had driven Ethan away. One day, as she sat in her study, staring at a family photo from years ago, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was her older sister, Margaret, who had always been the more down-to-earth sibling. "Vivian, we need to talk," Margaret said, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. Vivian sighed. "If this is about Ethan..." "It is," Margaret interrupted. "You're going to lose him, Vivian. And if you keep this up, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Vivian's jaw tightened. "He's made his choice. And why do you think that is?" Margaret asked, her voice gentle but firm. "You've spent his entire life trying to mold him into your image, and now he's finally found someone who makes him happy. Why can't you let him have that?" Vivian looked away, her composure faltering. I want what's best for him." "Do you?" Margaret asked. "Or do you want what's best for your ego?" The words stung, but they stayed with Vivian long after Margaret had left. Months passed, and Ethan and Lily's relationship continued to grow stronger. They supported each other through the ups and downs, finding joy in the simple moments they shared. One evening, as they walked through the park, Ethan stopped suddenly, pulling Lily close. "Lily," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I know things haven't been easy, but you've made my life better in every way. I can't imagine my future without you." He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate engagement ring. "Will you marry me?" Lily gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered, throwing her arms around him. 8,000 times yes. The news of their engagement spread quickly, and it wasn't long before Vivian heard about it. 4 days, she stayed locked in her room, grappling with her emotions. She knew she had pushed Ethan away, but the thought of him starting a new chapter of his life without her was unbearable. Finally, she made a decision. With trembling hands, she picked up the phone and called Ethan. "Mother?" Ethan said, his voice wary. "Ethan," Vivian began, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. I'd like to meet Lily again. Properly this time." Ethan was silent for a long moment before replying, "Are you sure?" "I am," Vivian said, her voice firm. "I owe both of you that much." When Vivian met Lily for the second time, it was a far cry from their first encounter. They sat together in the Langford Estate's sunroom, the tension palpable but not hostile. "Lily," Vivian said, her tone measured, "I want to apologize for how I treated you. I was wrong to judge you before I got to know you." Lily glanced at Ethan, then back at Vivian. "Thank you, Mrs. Langford. That means a lot." Vivian took a deep breath. "Ethan has always been the most important person in my life. I see now that you make him happy, and that's all I could ever want for him." For the first time, Ethan saw a vulnerability in his mother that he hadn't thought possible. He reached for Lily's hand, a small smile on his face. "Thank you, Mother." The wedding was a beautiful and intimate affair, held at a small garden that Lily had loved since childhood. Vivian attended, her expression a mix of pride and humility as she watched her son marry the woman he loved. For Ethan and Lily, it was the beginning of a life built on love, resilience, and the belief that true happiness came not from wealth or status, but from the connections they shared. As they danced under the stars that night, Ethan whispered to Lily, "We made it." Lily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "We did. Together." Life after Ethan and Lily's wedding was a blend of challenges and joy. Their new life together was modest but full of meaning. Ethan had traded the luxuries of the Langford estate for a small, cozy home filled with warmth and laughter. He continued his work at the nonprofit, helping to create opportunities for underserved communities, while Lily poured her heart into her teaching, inspiring her students every day. The couple's love deepened as they faced life's ups and downs together, but Vivian's presence in their lives remained complicated. While she had made an effort to accept their relationship, old habits died hard. Every interaction with her carried a hint of tension, as though she were still coming to terms with her son's decision. One Sunday afternoon, Vivian invited Ethan and Lily to the estate for tea. They hesitated, unsure of her intentions, but decided to go, hopeful that the gesture marked another step toward reconciliation. The estate felt as grand and imposing as ever, its opulence a stark contrast to the simplicity of their lives. Vivian greeted them at the door, her demeanor polite but reserved. "Thank you for coming," she said, leading them to the sunroom. As they sat, Vivian began to speak, her voice calm but measured. "Ethan, Lily, I've been thinking a lot about the choices you've made. While I still struggle to understand why you would give up everything, I see how happy you are together. I want to be part of your lives." Lily glanced at Ethan, unsure how to respond. Ethan, sensing her hesitation, spoke first. "Mother, we appreciate you saying that. We want you in our lives too, but it has to be on equal terms. No more judgments, no more trying to control everything." Vivian nodded slowly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I understand. And I want to try." It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. As the months went on, Vivian made genuine efforts to mend her relationship with Ethan and Lily. She invited them to family dinners, attended Lily's school events, and even visited the nonprofit where Ethan worked. Slowly but surely, the walls between them began to crumble. One day, Vivian surprised everyone by offering a significant donation to Ethan's nonprofit. "I want to support what you're doing," she told him. "It's clear that this work is important to you, and I want to be part of it." Ethan was touched by the gesture, though he couldn't help but wonder if it was her way of trying to regain control. Still, he accepted the donation, choosing to see it as a step forward. Meanwhile, Lily faced her own challenges at work. A budget cut at her school threatened to eliminate several programs she had worked hard to build, including an after-school tutoring initiative for struggling students. Determined to save the program, Lily began organizing a fundraiser, rallying parents and teachers to help. When Ethan heard about the situation, he immediately offered to assist. "We'll figure this out together," he said, brainstorming ideas late into the night. Vivian, overhearing their plans during a visit, offered to help as well. "Let me host the fundraiser at the estate," she suggested. "We have the space, and it will attract the kind of donors who can make a real difference." Lily hesitated, unsure if she wanted to involve Vivian in something so close to her heart. But Ethan encouraged her to accept. "This is her way of showing support," he said. "Let's give her a chance." The fundraiser was a resounding success. Held in the Langford Estate's Grand Ballroom, the event brought together community members, philanthropists, and local leaders. Lily spoke passionately about the importance of education, sharing stories of her students and the impact the tutoring program had on their lives. "To these children, this program isn't just about academics," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "It's about hope. It's about showing them that someone believes in them, even when the world seems stacked against them." The room erupted into applause, and by the end of the night, they had raised more than enough to save the program. Vivian watched from the sidelines, a small smile on her face as she saw the admiration Lily earned from the crowd. That evening, as the guests trickled out, Vivian approached Lily. "You were incredible tonight," she said, her tone sincere. "I can see why Ethan fell in love with you." Lily blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you, Mrs. Langford. That means a lot." "Please," Vivian said, her voice softening. "Call me Vivian." It was a small moment, but it marked a significant shift in their relationship. Over time, Vivian's involvement in Ethan and Lily's lives became less about control and more about connection. She began to see Lily not as an outsider, but as someone who brought out the best in her son. The bond between them grew slowly, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. One day, as they walked through the garden together, Vivian turned to Lily with an unexpected question. "What made you fall in love with Ethan?" Lily smiled, her gaze thoughtful. "He sees the world differently. He doesn't care about appearances or expectations. He cares about people. And he makes me feel like I can do anything." Vivian nodded, her expression pensive. "He's always been like that. I suppose I didn't see it clearly until now." Lily hesitated, then said, "And I know how much he loves you. He's always wanted your approval, Vivian. I think he's just been waiting for you to see him for who he really is." Vivian's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I've made so many mistakes. I just hope it's not too late to make things right." "It's not," Lily said gently. "Ethan loves you. He just wants you to be part of his life." The final piece of their reconciliation came when Lily and Ethan shared news that would change everything. They were expecting their first child. When they told Vivian, her reaction surprised them. She burst into tears, pulling both of them into a tight embrace. "I'm going to be a grandmother," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for giving me this chance to be part of your family." Ethan and Lily exchanged a smile, their hearts full. For the first time, it felt like all the pieces of their lives were coming together. The months that followed were filled with anticipation and joy. Vivian became an enthusiastic grandmother-to-be, helping Lily prepare for the baby's arrival and showering her with support. The once frosty relationship between the two women had thawed completely, transforming into a bond built on trust and love. When their daughter, Grace, was born, she became the center of their world. Vivian doted on her granddaughter, spoiling her with gifts and affection while respecting Ethan and Lily's boundaries. As Ethan held Grace in his arms one evening, he looked at Lily with a soft smile. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "We have," Lily agreed, resting her head on his shoulder. "And it was worth every struggle." Years later, as Grace grew up surrounded by love and support, the Langford family found a new kind of harmony. Vivian, once so rigid in her ways, had become a source of wisdom and encouragement, often reflecting on the lessons she had learned from her son and daughter-in-law. One day, as the family gathered for Grace's 5th birthday, Vivian pulled Ethan aside. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said. "You've built a life filled with love and meaning, and I'm grateful to be part of it." Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you, Mother. That means everything to me." As the party continued, Ethan and Lily stood together, watching Grace blow out her candles. Their journey had been anything but easy, but it had led them to a life richer than they could have ever imagined. The years passed in a joyful blur, and the Langford family continued to grow closer. Grace, with her bright eyes and boundless energy, became the glue that bonded everyone together. For Vivian, being a grandmother brought a kind of fulfillment she had never known. She was no longer the sharp, controlling matriarch she had once been. Instead, she embraced her role as a supportive presence in Ethan and Lily's lives. Despite this harmony, life still presented its challenges. One evening, as Ethan and Lily were tucking Grace into bed, Ethan received an urgent call. It was from the board of the nonprofit where he worked. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, noticing the tension in his face as he hung up the phone. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The organization's biggest donor just pulled out. They're threatening to cut key programs unless we can find replacement funding." Lily's brow furrowed. "What can we do?" "I'm not sure yet," Ethan admitted. "I'll have to meet with the board tomorrow and figure out our options." The next day, Ethan shared the news with Vivian, hoping her connections might help. To his surprise, she didn't hesitate. "I'll arrange a meeting with some of my contacts," she said. "We'll find a way to keep those programs running." Ethan hesitated. "Are you sure, Mother? I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position." Vivian waved a hand dismissively. "Nonsense. This is important to you, and that makes it important to me." True to her word, Vivian used her influence to bring together a group of potential donors. The meeting, held at the Langford estate, was a blend of old-world elegance and modern passion. Ethan spoke from the heart, sharing stories of the lives the nonprofit had touched and the urgent need to keep its programs alive. By the end of the evening, they had secured enough funding to not only sustain the nonprofit but expand its reach. After the donors had left, Ethan turned to Vivian, his gratitude evident. "Thank you, Mother. I couldn't have done this without you." Vivian smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "You're doing important work, Ethan. I'm proud of you." It wasn't the first time she had said those words, but each time, they carried new meaning. For Ethan, they represented the transformation of their relationship, from one built on control and expectation to one rooted in mutual respect and love. As Grace grew older, she began to take an interest in her parents' and grandmother's work. At just 8 years old, she started asking questions about the nonprofit and Lily's teaching. "Mommy, can I come to your school and help your students?" she asked one afternoon. Lily smiled, touched by her daughter's eagerness. "Maybe when you're a little older, sweetheart. But you can always help me prepare lessons at home." "And, Daddy," Grace continued, turning to Ethan, "can I come to the nonprofit with you someday?" "Of course," Ethan said, ruffling her hair. "You're always welcome." Vivian watched the exchange with a mix of pride and nostalgia. Grace's curiosity and compassion reminded her of Ethan as a child, full of potential and eager to make a difference. The family's bond deepened further when Lily faced a personal challenge. One day, during a routine checkup, she was diagnosed with a benign but potentially dangerous tumor. The news shook the family, but Lily faced it with her characteristic strength. "I'll get through this," she told Ethan as they sat together in the hospital waiting room. "I just need you to be by my side." "Always," Ethan said, squeezing her hand. The surgery to remove the tumor was successful, but the recovery process was slow. During this time, Vivian stepped up in ways that surprised even herself. She moved into Ethan and Lily's home temporarily, helping with Grace and supporting Lily through her recovery. One evening, as she sat by Lily's bedside, Vivian spoke words that carried the weight of years of growth. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever known, Lily. Watching you has taught me what real courage looks like." Lily, her voice soft but steady, replied, "And you've shown me that people can change, Vivian. I'm grateful for you." Lily's recovery marked another turning point for the family. They emerged from the experience stronger and more united than ever, with a renewed appreciation for each other and the life they had built together. As Grace entered her teenage years, she began to forge her own path, inspired by the examples set by her parents and grandmother. She excelled in school, particularly in social studies, and often volunteered at her father's nonprofit and her mother's school. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Grace made an announcement that caught everyone off guard. "I want to start my own project," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Something that combines what all of you do, helping people, teaching, and making the world a better place." Ethan and Lily exchanged proud smiles, while Vivian leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of project, dear?" "I'm not sure yet," Grace admitted. "But I want it to be something that helps kids like me, Kids who want to make a difference but don't know how. That's a wonderful idea, Lily said. We'll help you however we can. Over the next few months, Grace worked tirelessly on her project, with guidance from her parents and grandmother. She organized a community event that brought together students, teachers, and nonprofit leaders to brainstorm ways to support local families. The event was a resounding success, with Grace earning admiration for her leadership and vision. On the day of the event, Vivian pulled Ethan aside, her voice filled with emotion. "Your daughter is incredible, Ethan. Watching her tonight, I see so much of you in her." Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "She's got the best parts of all of us." Vivian nodded, her eyes glistening. "You've given her a beautiful life." As the years went by, the Langford family continued to thrive, each member contributing to the world in their own unique way. Ethan's nonprofit expanded its reach, Lily became a mentor to young teachers, and Vivian devoted herself to philanthropy, using her resources to support causes close to her heart. Grace, now a young woman, carried the torch of her family's legacy. She pursued a degree in social work, determined to create lasting change in the world. On the day of her college graduation, as she stood with her diploma in hand, she looked out at the crowd and saw her parents and grandmother beaming with pride. Later, during the family celebration, Grace made a toast. "To my family," she said, raising her glass. "You've taught me what it means to love, to fight for what's right, and to believe in myself. I wouldn't be here without you." As they clinked glasses, Ethan, Lily, and Vivian shared a quiet moment of reflection. Their journey had been filled with trials and heartbreak, but it had brought them to a place of love and connection they hadn't thought possible. In the end, the Langford family's story wasn't just one of love conquering all, it was a testament to the power of growth, forgiveness, and the belief that even the deepest divides can be bridged with understanding and compassion. And as they stood together that night, they knew they had created something truly extraordinary, a legacy of love and resilience that would endure for generations to come. Years later, the Langford family had become a beacon of hope and inspiration in their community. Their journey, marked by reconciliation, love, and a shared commitment to helping others, had left an indelible mark on everyone around them. Ethan, now in his early 50s, reflected on how far they had come as he walked through the nonprofit headquarters one morning. It had grown into a sprawling organization with chapters across the country, tackling issues ranging from education to healthcare access. Ethan's work had evolved from managing day-to-day operations to mentoring the next generation of nonprofit leaders. Though he missed being on the ground, he found fulfillment in guiding others to carry on the mission he had started. On this particular morning, he was preparing for a meeting with Grace, who had recently joined the nonprofit as a director of community outreach. "Dad," Grace said, walking into his office with a stack of reports in hand, "we've got an incredible opportunity to expand into 3 more states. There's a grant available, and I think we have a strong case to win it." Ethan smiled, proud of his daughter's passion and determination. "Let's take a look," he said, motioning for her to sit. As they reviewed the proposal together, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how much Grace had grown. She had inherited Lily's compassion and his drive, and she approached her work with the same unrelenting focus that had defined their family's journey. As they wrapped up their discussion, Grace paused, looking thoughtful. "You know, Dad," she said, "none of this would have happened without you and Mom. You both gave me the foundation to believe in myself and follow my dreams." Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. "We just gave you the tools, Grace. You've built something extraordinary all on your own." Meanwhile, Lily had become a beloved figure in the education world, known for her innovative teaching methods and her unwavering commitment to students. She had authored several books on education reform and frequently spoke at conferences, inspiring teachers across the country. Though her work kept her busy, she always made time for her family, finding joy in the little moments they shared. One evening, as she and Ethan sat on their porch watching the sunset, Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" she asked. "All the time," Ethan replied, wrapping an arm around her. "But I wouldn't change a thing. Every challenge, every fight, it brought us here." Lily smiled, her eyes soft with gratitude. "Me neither. And I can't wait to see what the future holds." Vivian, now in her 80s, had embraced her role as the family matriarch with grace. The once stern woman had become a source of wisdom and warmth, her transformation inspiring everyone who knew her. She spent her days supporting philanthropic causes, attending Grace's events, and doting on her great-grandchildren. One day, as she sat in her garden with Grace's young daughter, Ella, she shared stories about her own childhood. "When I was your age," Vivian said, "I thought the world revolved around rules and appearances. But you know what I've learned?" "What, Grandma?" Ella asked, her big eyes wide with curiosity. Vivian smiled, her voice gentle. "The most important thing in life is love. Loving your family, your friends, and yourself." Ella nodded solemnly, as though she truly understood. "I love you, Grandma." "And I love you, my sweet girl," Vivian said, pulling her close. The Langford family's story reached its most poignant chapter when Vivian's health began to decline. She had lived a full and meaningful life, but age was catching up with her. One evening, as the family gathered at the estate, she addressed them with a heartfelt speech. "I want you all to know how proud I am of you," Vivian said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Ethan, Lily, Grace, you've created a legacy that goes far beyond this family. You've shown the world what it means to lead with love and compassion." Ethan reached for her hand, his voice thick with emotion. "We couldn't have done it without you, Mother." Vivian smiled, her eyes glistening. "You've all taught me so much. Thank you for giving me the chance to change." When Vivian passed away peacefully in her sleep a few months later, the family was heartbroken but grateful for the time they had shared. Her funeral was a celebration of her life, attended by countless people whose lives she had touched. Grace delivered a eulogy that brought the entire room to tears. "My grandmother was a force of nature," Grace said, her voice clear and strong. "She taught me that it's never too late to grow, to change, and to make things right." Her journey was a testament to the power of love and redemption, and her legacy will live on in all of us. As the family laid Vivian to rest, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her memory became a guiding light, reminding them of the values she had embraced in her later years. In the years that followed, the Langford family continued to thrive, each member carrying forward the lessons they had learned. Ethan and Lily retired eventually, passing the torch to Grace, who had become a leader in her own right. She expanded the nonprofit's reach even further, ensuring that its impact would endure for generations. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner at Grace's home, Ethan looked around the table, his heart full. There was Grace, sharing stories of her latest project. There was Lily, laughing with their grandchildren. And there, in the faces of the next generation, was the proof that everything they had fought for was worth it. "This is what it's all about," Ethan said quietly to Lily, squeezing her hand. She smiled, leaning into him. "It always has been." Their story, like all great stories, was not one of perfection but of perseverance. The Langfords had faced their share of heartbreak and struggle, but they had emerged stronger, bound together by love and the unshakable belief that they could create a better world, together. And as the years turned into decades, their legacy grew, touching countless lives and proving that even the most divided families could find their way back to each other, one step at a time. As the Langford family moved into the next chapter of their lives, Grace's leadership in the nonprofit world continued to flourish. She had inherited her father's ability to inspire and her mother's grounded compassion, making her a natural force for change. Under her guidance, the organization expanded internationally, bringing resources to underserved communities in regions her grandparents had only dreamed of reaching. Despite the growing demands of her career, Grace remained close to her family. She often sought her parents' advice, not out of necessity but because she valued their wisdom. Ethan and Lily, now retired, found immense joy in supporting her from the sidelines. One evening, Grace visited her parents at their cozy home. She brought along her children, Ella and Max, who ran into the house with the unrestrained energy only children could muster. "Grandpa! Grandma!" they shouted, rushing into Ethan and Lily's arms. Ethan chuckled, lifting Ella into the air. "You're getting heavier every time I see you." "That's because I'm growing, Grandpa," she replied matter-of-factly. Lily kissed Max on the forehead, her smile warm. "And how's school, sweetheart?" "Good," Max exclaimed. "But Grace says I should start calling her mom at work." Grace laughed as she set down a stack of papers. "They've been coming to the office more often. Ella decided she's my assistant, and Max thinks he runs the place." Ethan smiled, a wave of pride washing over him. "Sounds like they're following in your footsteps already." Later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, Grace sat with her parents in the living room. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the room. "I wanted to talk to you about something," Grace began, her tone serious but tinged with excitement. "I've been approached by a coalition of global nonprofits to lead a major initiative. They want me to coordinate efforts to tackle poverty and education inequality on a global scale." Lily's eyes lit up. "Grace, that's incredible." "It is," Grace agreed. "But it's also overwhelming. It would mean a lot of travel, a lot of time away from Ella and Max. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'm ready for something this big." Ethan leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Grace, you've been preparing for this your entire life. You've already built something extraordinary. If anyone can handle this, it's you." "But what about the kids?" Grace asked, her voice tinged with worry. "I don't want them to feel like I'm not there for them." Lily reached for her hand. "You'll find a balance, Grace. And you have us to help. Whatever you decide, we'll support you." Grace smiled, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you. I'll need all the help I can get." Grace ultimately decided to take on the role, diving headfirst into the ambitious initiative. The work was challenging, but she approached it with the same determination and grace that had defined her career. She traveled to remote villages, urban centers, and everything in between, meeting people whose stories reaffirmed her commitment to making a difference. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lily stepped in to support Ella and Max, becoming an even bigger part of their grandchildren's lives. They picked them up from school, helped with homework, and attended every soccer game and school play. For Ethan and Lily, it was a chance to pour their love and experience into the next generation. One evening, as Ethan and Lily tucked Ella and Max into bed, Ella looked up at her grandfather with wide eyes. "Grandpa, is Mom changing the whole world?" Ethan chuckled, sitting beside her on the bed. "She's trying her best. Just like you will someday." Ella furrowed her brow. "I don't know how to change the world." "You don't have to figure it out right now," Lily said, brushing a strand of hair from Ella's face. "Just be kind, work hard, and always look for ways to help others. That's how your mom started. And that's how you'll make a difference," Ethan added. "One small step at a time." As the years went by, Grace's work gained international recognition. She was invited to speak at the United Nations, where she delivered a powerful speech about the importance of collective action in addressing global inequality. "Our work isn't just about numbers or programs," she said, her voice steady and passionate. "It's about people, real people whose lives are changed when we come together to create opportunities. Each of us has the power to make a difference, no matter how small it may seem." The speech was met with a standing ovation, cementing Grace's status as a leader in the global nonprofit community. Back home, Ethan and Lily watched Grace's accomplishments with pride, but they also cherished the quieter moments they shared with her and the grandchildren. One summer evening, the family gathered for a picnic at the park, laughing and reminiscing as the sun set. As they sat together, Ethan turned to Lily, his voice soft. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" "All the time," Lily replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "And I'm grateful for every step of the journey." Ethan smiled, his gaze sweeping over their family. "This is the legacy I always wanted. Not the money, not the estate. This love, resilience, and the belief that we can make the world a better place." As Ethan and Lily entered their later years, they began to slow down, savoring the life they had built and the family they had nurtured. They passed on stories of their journey to Ella and Max, ensuring that the lessons they had learned would live on. One day, as the family gathered to celebrate Ethan and Lily's 50th wedding anniversary, Grace stood to make a toast. "To Mom and Dad," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've taught us that love isn't just about the good times. It's about weathering the storms together. You've shown us the power of forgiveness, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the beauty of a life lived with purpose." "We're all here because of you, and we're so grateful for the legacy you've given us." The room erupted into applause, and Ethan and Lily exchanged a look of deep understanding. They had faced more than their share of challenges, but they had come through stronger together. In the end, the Langford family story was one of transformation, redemption, and unwavering love. They had grown from a fractured, divided household into a family united by shared values and a commitment to making the world a better place. Their legacy wasn't one of wealth or status, but of kindness, resilience, and the belief that change starts with the courage to take the first step. And as they looked to the future, they knew that their story was far from over. It lived on in the lives they touched, the lessons they shared, and the generations yet to come.